Hi, Zizaran here with another game review, and this is V Rising. Have you ever dreamt of being a vampire and killing your friends and sucking the blood out of them? Then this might be the game for you. So we're gonna try to keep this pretty spoiler free as far as like boss fights and things like that. We're only gonna show some of the early stuff, but first off, why review a game like V Rising? There's so many cool things about this game. It's a bit of a weird game. There's not really any game quite like it. It's a little bit like an RPG. It's a little bit like Rust. It's a little bit like a lot of games, but there's nothing quite like V Rising. So you are a vampire, obviously afraid of sunlight, which sometimes brings out panicked moments such as this. It's a game that you can play solo and do the PvE progression. You can play it in a group, and you can also focus on PvP. There's base raiding, very similar to Rust. There's resource gathering, grinding, and something that's added in the latest Gloomrod expansion, rare items like legendaries they have roles. They have roles in the roles. So like, you know, you could get maybe crit chance or crit chance with spells, and there would be a role. Is it 6% or 12%? Making it a bit of an ARPG feeling. A really cool part about this game is that regardless if you like PvP or PvE, both of them are really good. And there's so many settings too, so you can play with full loot or not. For example, you could have that when somebody kills you, you drop your entire inventory on all the stuff you've been grinding, the resources you've been farming. Or you can have that you lose all your gear and get a huge setback, and then you need to play around that and farm up multiple sets. There's 3 of them! I fucked up so much! No!
Do you have anything on you?
No. Such a like fun, skill-based, and smooth flowing game. I really like this game. That's a big part of why I want to review it. So the combat is amazing in this game, and for a multitude of reasons that make it quite special. So it has an isometric camera like an ARPG, but it has WASD controls to facilitate the rest of combat. You're just moving the camera around with, I think you have to hold down the right mouse button, but you get very used to that quickly. You don't have that many skills, and there's cooldowns, and you have to like switch between your melee skills and your spell skills, and you can also do weapon swaps. For example, I would very often use the spear and the scythe and then use different abilities depending on what I was doing. And it has a little bit of a MOBA feel whenever you're in combat or playing the game in general, and it feels very skill-based and it feels very rewarding. And one thing I really like about this game is the ultimates really feel like ultimates. There's also like counters, directional blocks, and just so many things you can do to play around other abilities. There's not really like a set, or maybe there is, but at least we didn't really feel like there was a set of like best skills. Like me and Steelmage used completely different abilities, and I kept changing what abilities depending on what content I was going to be doing as well. A lot of the enemies and bosses, stuff like that, they're like pretty okay to fight when you're around the level. If you really want to challenge, try doing them like 5 to 10 levels lower, and they'll be really hard because you'll be in the fight for quite a lot longer and have to deal with a lot of the mechanics. And it feels a little bit like World of Warcraft, Lost Ark bosses, that kind of thing, where, you know, there's a lot of mechanics you have to avoid. And especially some of the later ones were really hard, where even though we'd actually played the game a decent amount at this point, we were actually wiping and being like, wow, we actually have to use potions and buffs to do these bosses. And the people behind this is Stunlock Studios, and they're behind older PvP games like Battle Right, Bloodline Champions that I actually haven't played, but I know a lot of people like my editor Skria and like RiseQT, etc. Other people really like these games, and while this is their first PvE entry, I can feel like this isn't the first time they've done things like this. So next up, let's talk about the progression. As discussed earlier, V Rising is a progression-based oriented survival game, but how does that work? So you start off as a weak vampire, firstly awoken from a coffin in a damp, empty cave, and you have nothing but your claws and rags. Quests are in the top right corner, and these will indicate where to go. These will stay with you pretty much until the very end game. You're gathering resources, defeating V-Blood power holders, and then you're crafting or killing other vampires who did your bidding, and that's the power progression. That's how you get stronger. You end up gathering materials in the open world, breaking ore, felling trees, picking flowers, and in true vampire fashion, slaughtering humans to acquire power. Unlocking upgrades in your castle, which also comes with a fully fledged building system, gives you access to new crafting stations to refine your materials to make new gear. For a PvP perspective, you might be wondering, can people destroy my base while I'm sleeping? Yeah, they can actually. However, on our server, we made a raiding window of just between 1 and 5 p.m. So the people that were playing, could play around that and know that if they wanted to be online and defend their base, that was the time they could do that. And that made it a lot more accessible for people. People wouldn't lose their base while they're sleeping. And honestly, on our server, most people were just focusing on killing each other and less about base destruction. Now, there's no character level or barriers in V-Rising, so let's talk about that a little bit. Your character level is dictated entirely by the item level of the gear you're wearing. There's no mandatory bosses hard gating progression. You just kill what you need to unlock crafting stations or power, and if you're in a group, not everybody needs to be there for every kill. One person can get it and build it for the group, and then you have it. The zones have tiers, and there's very clear a sort of linear progression, but nothing is stopping you from going to a higher zone. And if you know exactly how a boss moves, you could maybe kill it super early and get a skill that gives you a big advantage or something that gives you a large sense of progression. However, if you are, I think it's 15 or 20 levels below, a monster will just appear with a skull, and you're probably gonna have a really hard time to kill it. V-Bloods make up for a really interesting skill progression system as well. You choose a target from this menu, and that allows you to track a boss, as long as it's not too high level. And after defeating these bosses, which some are from Battlerite, you will gain one of their signature moves. And this system is awesome, as you can read about the targets, decide whether the skill they have is interesting to you, and then decide to hunt them. And on top of that, they've now added a skill gem system, sort of similar to Path of Exile, where you will find a rare skill gem, and you want to keep farming these and hope that you're getting one that is exactly what you want and changes the skill in a way you want. And there's a lot of different choice here, and a system that they can absolutely build upon and increase in the future. Let's talk about some other features of this game. Obviously, you are a vampire, and that means that you can't stay in the sun. You also need blood, and this will deteriorate slowly over time, and either your healing and just doing things in general will expend blood, so you are incentivized to go out and make sure that you are sucking on some tasty humans. And in this game, there's different types of mutant blood, brute blood, rogue blood, and they all do different things. We can see in the background a lot of the different buffs that they give. And if you're ever able to get 100% blood, that buffs all the previous effects by 30%. So this becomes a really big chase in the end game, where you're running around searching for humans to imprison in your castle. And there's a bat device where you basically send them back, put them in prison, and you can just use them as a little blood tap. Being a vampire has other perks, for example, loads of different types of shape-shifting. You can turn into a frog, a bat, and actually fly, a bear, etc. And the bat in particular is really cool. You can't see the ground, or rather you can't see enemies and stuff. That would be a little overpowered if somebody gets it early. However, you also have to be careful because there's toasty sunlight up there. And that means that you really want to use the bat form at night. Next up, let's talk about my favorite thing about V-Rising, the PvP. V-Rising has some of the best features of an MMO, PvP, and MOBAs combined together. You can gank, be ganked, flee, raid bases, defend your own base, fight for control over powerful soul shards, and more. As said before in this video, V-Rising is a complete package without PvP, and it's completely opt-in. But if you like PvP, it really is wonderful. Woo! Good fight.
Almost, yeah.
The way it works is that you set up your world the way you want to. There's loads of settings, for example, there's at the end game, there are special bosses that I don't want to spoil too much about, but they will drop buff shards. And there's a setting, for example, that you can have everyone can farm these, and it's just unlimited, or they can be limited to 3, and that becomes the main PvP thing that people will raid each other for. And PvP is this game's way of adding replayability, as every playthrough will feel different as it changes up the goals and the squads you're up against, and you're going to approach the game differently. And the combat system facilitates PvP very well. The usage of blood throughout the game will make an important resource in PvP, and you can share blood between teammates by exposing your throat, or when you revive a friend, they will get part of your blood. There's also counters, directional blocks, skill shots, and they all feel extremely tight and precise, which makes PvP feel amazing. Another thing that's very old school and very cool is canceling skill shots. For example, if I've been fighting somebody for a while and they know that I have an Ice Lance skill and I know that they have a counter, I can use the Ice Lance but cancel it before throwing it. This can cause my enemy to boom, use their block, well now they're wasted it, and then I can actually throw the Ice Lance and maybe freeze them. Now, there are other systems that come into play that make PvP feel very fleshed out and well implemented. There are servants that you can convert to be defenders of your base. You don't have to just imprison them, and you can gear these up as well. You can become a golem by crafting a relatively expensive item called the siege golem, and you can then damage castle walls. This is obviously pretty risky because you're very vulnerable to enemy attacks at this point. V Rising is such a complete and amazing game. I think it's still in early access, but it's one of the most, it really like feels full. I was so happy. Played like over 100 hours of the game and it's just $20. So it is an absolute steal and I super recommend this. An absolute blast. Whether you're going to play PvE, whether you're going to play solo, or you're going to go around joining different PvP servers, it is an absolute blast. I give it an 8 out of 10, which is extremely hard for me, seeing as I think I've only given one game a 9. And none a 10, but just really blown away with this game. Now, as far as like optimization and stability, and maybe some people are thinking, oh no, now it's actually really good there too. The only problem is it has a memory leak. So I ended up, if I was playing for like 10 hours and had a very big base, then you would have to restart your client. Now, obviously that's maybe not a problem for most people. If you're only going to play for like a shorter 5 or 6 hour session, probably won't matter much. But yeah, if you have a large base and you're playing for more than 10 hours, you are going to have to restart. And something that was just so insanely impressive to me, it would be criminal not to talk about it. Every game ever should just hire the people that made this game, because I've never seen anything more impressive than the fact that the entire world is persistent seemingly all the time. You can run around in a huge circle around this massive map, hit some enemies. If you come back 10 minutes later, those enemies are now, well, obviously they're walking, but you know that they're the same enemies, same percentage blood, and they've been walking and doing their thing while you're far away. So it seems like the entire world is persistent and existing and doing their own thing, fighting each other, because monsters fight other monsters, all at the same time. And I just have no idea how it's not more unoptimized. It's so good. Now, I've seen some criticism about the fact that it's an early access game, but it already has DLCs. So what do you get from these DLCs? What content is locked behind it? Nothing. These actually shouldn't be called DLCs. They're actually basically supporter packs. They are cosmetic only and will not impact your gameplay in any way. They're just different skins for things in the game. That being said, the game is not fully out yet. It really should be. I don't know why they still call it early access, because it feels like one of the most finished and polished games I've ever played. I love that they're still working on it and want to do better. I'm just blown away by this one. It's been such a blast. It's the second time I made a community server, and I'll definitely make another one in the future. I think next time we'll probably do a solo or a duo server and have a bunch of different teams and maybe up the server limit. The recommended server limit is 40. This time we did 50. Maybe next time we'll do 60 or 70 and have a bunch of people on the server. Either way, an absolute blast, and just, yeah, really looking forward to playing it again and looking forward to seeing what the developers are going to do in the future. Either way, I hope you guys enjoy my game reviews. Thank you so much for watching. Sub if you liked the video. Feel free to let me know what areas we can improve in game reviews. But either way, try to die less than I do.
Oh, this is badass.
This is bullying.
We love to see it.
Just knocking our...
Oh no!
Stop being mean.
Drink up.
Chug, chug, chug.